Right after high school graduation, my dad had a sudden midlife crisis and bleached his hair platinum blonde. On college moving day, he showed up dripping in streetwear, riding a custom Harley to drop me off. He was way too hot for his own good, turning heads the entire way across campus. Everyone staring assumed he was my sugar daddy. And, of course, out of all the people in the world, the guy I've been secretly crushing on was there to witness it, David. He just gave us one cold sweeping look and walked away. Later that night, I ended up screaming daddy until my throat went hoarse. David showed absolutely no mercy. The midlife crisis hit my dad hard. The second I got my high school diploma, the platinum blonde hair was just the beginning. By the time college move-in day rolled around, he rolled up to the dorms on a roaring motorcycle, decked out in designer streetwear. He pulled off his helmet and casually shook out his hair. I buried my face in my hands. Dad, you're 36, not 16. The second I stepped into my dorm room, my 3 new roommates practically broke their necks, peering out the window. Holy shit. Who is that blonde god who just dropped you off? Odd shoulders, narrow waist legs. For days. The older man aesthetic is literally aiming right for my heart. Is that your boyfriend? I dropped my suitcase on the floor. That's my dad. The room went dead silent for 3 seconds. Then one of them looked at me with absolute deadly seriousness. Is your dad currently accepting applications for stepdaughters? Because I can call him daddy right now. I just stared at her. Right on cue. My dad knocked lazily on the open door frame. You all unpacked, sweetie? Let's go grab some food. My roommate's eyes instantly shifted from shock to pure, unadulterated envy. I grabbed his arm and dragged him out into the hallway as fast as I could. Let's go. Let's go. Stop embarrassing me. My dad raised an eyebrow. Embarrassing? Do you know how many girls asked for my Snapchat? On the way across the quad, he smoothly took my tote bag from my shoulder and looked down at me. Were you craving, sweetie? I was just about to tell him to stop being so cheesy when my eyes locked onto David. He had just finished playing basketball. His dark hair was damp with sweat. His white t-shirt clinging to the sharp lines of his shoulders and back. His pale skin was flushed from the workout. My heart kicked into overdrive, heat rushing straight to my cheeks. For 3 years of high school, I had quietly passed him notebook paper, lent him pens, and stared at the back of his head more times than I could count. He was standing just a few feet away holding a bottle of water. His dark eyes dropped to where my dad's hand was resting, casually on my shoulder. My chest tightened. I opened my mouth to call out to him, David. Before the word fully left my lips, his knuckles turned white, and the plastic water bottle in his hand gave a loud, violent crack. The guy standing next to him jumped. David, what the hell, man? Aren't we grabbing food? David dragged his gaze away, his voice freezing cold. I lost my appetite. He turned on his heel and walked away. The greeting died on my tongue. His friends stood there looking totally lost. What is his problem? He was literally fine 2 seconds ago. Another guy rubbed the back of his neck. No idea. He's been acting like someone keyed his car ever since he got back from registration. He paused, lowering his voice. You don't think it's about Brenda, do you? Brenda. Just hearing that name felt like a bucket of ice water down my back. On the day of his 18th birthday party, Brenda was the only girl David had actually accepted a gift from, so he was in a bad mood because of her. My dad watched David walk away, then looked down at me and patted my shoulder. Don't sweat it, kid, men are basically garbage. Anyway, I shot him a flat look right, coming from the guy who had a kid at 18, real solid track record. Late that night in the freshman boys' dorm, the silence in David's room was suffocating. His roommate, Brody, was scrolling through the campus gossip page when he suddenly burst out laughing. Bro, you gotta see this. Some blonde dude on a Harley dropped a freshman girl off today. First day of college. And her sugar daddy is already marking his territory. David lifted his eyes, who Brody tossed him his phone. In the grainy photo, the blonde guy was holding Sally's bag in one hand, his other arm draped protectively over her shoulder. Sally was looking up at him, a bright, effortless smile on her face. Comment section was completely out of control. Freshmen are built different this year. Boyfriend already pulling up to assert dominance. The older guy blonde aesthetic is actually doing things to me. Who wouldn't want a 6'2" older daddy who actually pays for things? David stared at the screen for a long, agonizing minute, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous register. Do girls really like calling their boyfriends daddy now? The next day was uniform pickup for the mandatory freshman phys ed boot camp. I dragged a heavy stack of registration forms around the campus quad for 20 minutes before finally accepting that I had zero sense of direction. The late summer sun was brutal, making my head spin. To make matters worse, my heavy duffel bag got snagged on the corner of a concrete step. I yanked it twice, but it wouldn't budge. Suddenly, a large hand reached past me. David lifted the bag with zero effort, his face completely unreadable. "Where are you going?" I blinked up at him. "What are you doing here?" "Just walking by." His tone was detached, but he smoothly slung my heavy bag over his own shoulder and took half the forms right out of my arms. I had to jog slightly to keep up with his long strides, my heart doing stupid little flips in my chest. "Yesterday, why did you just leave like that?" David's footsteps faltered. He looked at me out of the corner of his eye. "I didn't want to interrupt you." "To interrupt what?" We kept walking side by side. There happened to be a local farmer's market pop up near the edge of campus, and a guy selling produce was shouting over the crowd, "Fresh watermelons, sweetest on campus." David's comment about not wanting to interrupt had left an empty, hollow feeling in my chest. Needing a distraction, I crouched down by the fruit stand. I tapped the rind of a dark, deeply lined watermelon at the edge of the pile. "I'll take this one." The vendor grinned widely. "You've got a good eye, little lady. You picked out the oldest one in the bunch." I was just about to nod when a cool, sharp voice drifted down from above me. "So you really do like the mold?" I looked up, hugging the watermelon to my chest in total confusion. "Yeah, I guess." He stared at the melon in my arms, a bitter little smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Makes perfect sense." I frowned. "What?" David didn't say another word. He just adjusted his grip on my bag and kept walking. I instinctively called out after him, "David." He stopped, but he didn't turn around. I gathered my courage. "Are you just having a really bad week or something?" Suddenly, a guy jogged up and clapped him on the shoulder. "David, bro. Brenda's been looking everywhere for you. She said to meet her by the south gate." Brenda. Those 3 syllables killed whatever courage I had left. I walked up and pulled my bag off his shoulder, forcing a polite smile. "You should go. I can find my dorm from here." David turned to look at me, his dark eyes colder than they had been all day. Am I that embarrassing to be seen with? I recoiled, shocked. "No. I just don't want to keep you from her." David stared at me for a long, heavy moment. I dropped my gaze to the pavement, refusing to say anything else. He had barely taken 2 steps when my phone started ringing. My dad's booming voice blasted through the speaker. "Sweetie, you get your gear yet? I'm pulling the truck around to take you out to dinner." I scrambled to turn the volume down. "Got it. Got it. Please don't come to campus. You're causing a scene." "Nonsense. It's my baby girl's first week." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw David standing perfectly still, watching me. My hand jerked, and I accidentally hung up on my dad. David's gaze was glued to my phone screen. I rubbed the back of my neck, awkwardly. "Sorry about him. He's just like that." David stayed quiet for a few seconds before letting out a dry, mocking laugh. "It's really none of my business, is it?" Annoyance finally flared in my chest. I glared right back at him. "You're right, Brenda is your business. Go." I reached out to grab my stack of forms. My fingertips brushed against his skin, and I pulled back immediately like I'd been burned. David's eyes flicked down to the text. Conversation between me and my dad. On my screen, his voice was terrifyingly calm. "You better go too. Don't want to keep your daddy waiting." He turned and walked away into the crowd. I stood there hugging my bag, a lump forming in my throat. What the hell was his problem? If Brenda was waiting for him, why was he taking it out on me? I looked down to text my dad, ready to tell him to stop calling me sweetie in public. But when my eyes landed on his profile picture, I completely froze. When did this old man change his profile picture to this? I tapped on the image. It was an edgy black and white anime guy. And right underneath, it was a brand new bio, "Soul love of my life. Vivian." Vivian, my mom's name. The first social mixer of the semester was at a Korean barbecue joint, just off campus. I really didn't want to go, but my roommates practically dragged me by the ankles. "If you don't go to these things, you're going to be a ghost for the next 4 years. By the time they shoved me into the private dining room, it was already packed. David was there. He was sitting by the window, his jacket draped over the back of his chair, the sleeves of his dark shirt rolled up to his forearms. He was swirling a glass of liquor in his hand. Brenda walked over with a glass of lemon water and set it gently in front of him. "Pace yourself. You're going to feel awful tomorrow." David glanced up at her, then reached out and took the glass. Couldn't stomach watching it anymore. I turned and walked right back out the door. If I had stayed 1 second longer, I would have seen David slide that exact same glass of water over to Brody. Brody looked at it like it was a holy relic for me. "Drink it." I stood on the sidewalk outside the restaurant taking deep breaths. The cool night air helped clear the suffocating feeling in my chest. When I looked up, I accidentally locked eyes with David through the restaurant window. I immediately looked away. My phone buzzed, a text from my dad. "Sweetie, call me when you're done." I'm parked by the campus gate. Before I could even type a reply, my phone started ringing.
"Dad,
"Didn't I say I'd text you when I was done?" He chuckled softly on the other end, making sure no one sweeps you off your feet. "Who is going to sweep me off my feet? You look exactly like your mother." I took my eyes off her for 1 second and managed to steal her right out from under your grandfather's nose. Before hanging up, I threw one last glance over my shoulder. The dining room door was cracked open. David tipped his glass back and down the rest of his drink in one smooth motion. His throat worked as he swallowed. His dark brows pulled low in frustration. Brenda was sitting right next to him, her hand resting lightly on his forearm. I ended the call, texted my roommates that I had a headache, and started walking. The wind picked up, making my eyes sting. I was walking down a quiet side street leading back to the dorms when I heard heavy footsteps behind me.
Sally."
I stopped. David caught up to me. He had left his jacket inside. The top 2 buttons of his shirt were undone, his collarbone exposed, and the sharp scent of alcohol clung to him. I took a step back instinctively. "Why did you follow me?" He closed the distance between us, his voice rough and ragged. "Is he picking you up again?" "Who?" "Your daddy." I blinked, and the spark of anger from earlier erupted into a full blaze. The image of Brenda handing him water, of her hand on his arm, flashed behind my eyes. "Who gave him the right to interrogate me?" I lifted my chin and glared at him. "How is that any of your business?" The edges of David's eyes turned a deep bruised red. "So it's true?" I furrowed my brows. "What is true?" He took another step, trapping me against the brick wall of the alley. His voice was desultingly hoarse. "Is that the kind of guy you want?" He was so close I could feel the heat radiating off his chest. My stupid heart started hammering against my ribs. "David, you're drunk." He looked down at my lips, a bitter, self-deprecating smile twisting his features. "If he gets to be your daddy, let me be your dog."
"Deal."
I froze. The world around us, the distant clatter of dishes from the Korean barbecue place, the hum of passing cars, the chill of the autumn night wind, vanished completely. My brain stalled like an old engine. What did you just say?" My voice came out as a tiny squeak. David's breath hitched. The terrifying, ice-cold composure he usually wore like armor was cracked down the middle. His dark eyes were bloodshot, swirling with raw, pathetic misery. He took my silence as rejection. His shoulders slumped just a fraction, but he didn't pull back. "You heard me, Sally," he murmured, his voice low, gravelly, and entirely unfiltered. "You like older guys? You like guys who ride motorcycles and buy you designer bags and let you hold their arm on the quad? Fine. I don't have platinum hair. I don't drive a Harley. But I'm right here. I've been right here for 3 fucking years." He leaned in closer, his forehead almost resting against mine. The heat radiating off his body was overwhelming. "So throw me a bone," he whispered, sounding almost broken. "Just don't look at him like that again." My mind finally snapped back online. The dots connected in a blinding, chaotic flash of realization. The weird comments about watermelons being old. The comment about my dad marking his territory. The comment about fresh men versus older men on the campus. Gossip page. The cold looks. The sudden moody outbursts. The white-knuckled grip on the water bottle. He thought my dad was my sugar daddy. He thought the 36-year-old man who wore off-white, rode a custom bike, and bought me fried chicken was my middle-aged lover. A laugh suddenly ripped out of my throat. It wasn't a sweet laugh.
It was a
hysterical, unhinged bark that made David flinch back an inch, his dark brows drawing together in deep hurt and confusion. "You think," I gasped, grabbing the lapels of his open dark shirt to keep myself upright. "You actually think?" "Don't laugh at me," David growled softly, a flush creeping up his neck though. His hands stayed steady on the wall, trapping me. "I'm being serious, Sally." "David, you absolute idiot," I yelled, my voice ringing out across the alleyway. "He's 36. He had me when he was 18. That is my biological father." The stillness that followed was absolute. David's expression froze. The dark, brooding intensity in his eyes melted into a blank, hollow void. It was as if his entire nervous system had just shut down to prevent a total hard drive crash. "What?" he breathed. "My dad." I shoved his chest hard, though he barely moved an inch. "The blonde
guy."
the motorcycle, the streetwear. He had a sudden midlife crisis the week I graduated high school. He bleached his hair because he turned 36 and realized he was getting old. His name is Mark. He is married to my mother, Vivian. Their bio on WeChat is literally "sole love of my life, Vivian." I yanked my phone out of my pocket, unlocked it with trembling fingers, and shoved the screen directly into his face. It was a picture from 2 months ago. My dad, with his stupid platinum hair, standing in our kitchen in an apron that said "World's Okayest Cook," making pancakes, while my mom threw a spatula at his head. David stared at the screen. He didn't move. He didn't blink. 5 seconds passed. 10. Slowly, the color drained entirely from his face, leaving him deathly pale, before a violent crimson wave surged up from his collarbone, flooding his neck, his cheeks, and the tips of his ears. "He's your father?" David asked, his voice suddenly 3 octaves higher than usual. "Yes, you brainless ape," I yelled, pulling my bag tighter against my chest. Why else would I be calling him dad? Why else would he take my tote bag? You think I'm running around campus with a sugar daddy on move-in day? David's hand slowly slid down the brick wall. He stepped back, swallowing hard. His throat moved in a long, agonizing gulped motion. He cleared his throat, suddenly staring intensely at a piece of chewing gum stuck to the pavement. "Brody said," the gossip page said. "Brody is an idiot, and so are you." I scoffed, crossing my arms. "You didn't even ask. You just gave me that death glare, dragged your feet around campus, and then cornered me in an alley to offer to be my dog." As the words hung in the air, David looked like he wanted the earth to open up and swallow him whole. The confident, icy basketball star from high school was completely gone. In his place stood an 18-year-old boy who had just publicly ruined his own dignity in front of the girl he had secretly liked for 3 years. "I had liquor," David mumbled lamely, rubbing the back of his neck, his knuckles turning red from embarrassment. I wasn't thinking straight. Clearly, I stomped my foot. "And what about Brenda, huh? You were sitting right next to her. She was giving you water. She had her hand on your arm. If you're so busy being comforted by Brenda, why do you even care who I'm walking around with?" David snapped his head up, his dark eyes wide. "Brenda?" "Yes, Brenda." I shot back, the jealousy I'd been hiding all evening pouring out. "The girl from your 18th birthday. The only girl whose gift you actually accepted. The girl who was waiting for you at the South Gate today." David looked at me, his mouth slightly open. For a second, the embarrassment on his face gave way to something else, a strange, quiet spark of disbelief. "Sally," he said slowly, taking half a step toward me. "Brenda is my cousin." My mouth snapped shut. "You're what?" "My cousin," David repeated, his voice dropping back into its normal, calm register, though his ears were still flaming red. "Her mom is my mom's older sister. On my 18th birthday, she gave me a hand-painted portrait of my late grandfather because she's an art major. That's why I took it." I stood there, feeling the cold night air hit my face as my mind frantically scrambled to reprocess 3 years of high school history. She was at the South Gate today," I stammered. "Because my aunt sent her to bring me home-cooked soup for the dorm," David said. He took another step closer, his eyes locked onto mine. "And tonight at the barbecue place, she came over because she saw I was drinking on an empty stomach. I didn't drink the water she brought. I gave it to Brody. I saw her hand on your arm. She was telling me I looked pathetic," David said quietly. "She said, if you keep staring at the window like a dying dog waiting for its owner, I'm going to kick you." My heart pounded violently against my ribs. The embarrassment that had just belonged entirely to David suddenly flooded over me in an absolute tidal wave. I had spent 3 years thinking Brenda was his secret high school sweetheart. I had spent the last 2 days suffering through a silent, agonizing heartbreak because I thought he was taken. And all this time, he was sitting inside a Korean restaurant staring out the window at me like a dying dog. I squeezed my eyes shut, burying my hot face in my hands. "Oh my God. Sally, don't look at me." I groaned into my palms. "This is terrible. We are both idiots." "Sally, look at me." His fingers touched my wrists, gentle, warm, and trembling slightly. He softly pulled my hands away from my face. When I opened my eyes, David was standing right in front of me. The distance between us was gone. The cool alley breeze blew a strand of dark hair across his forehead. He wasn't wearing his cold, unapproachable mask anymore. His expression was soft, earnest, and completely exposed. "I thought I lost my chance," he whispered. "When I saw you on move-in day, with your dad, I thought you moved on. I thought you found someone better, someone older, someone who wasn't too much of a coward to talk to you in high school." I held my breath. "A coward? Do you know how many times I wrote your name on the margin of my notebooks?" David gave a faint, self-deprecating laugh. "Do you know why I always sat behind you in math class? It wasn't because I liked the back row. It was because every time you turned around to ask for a pen, I got to hear your voice." My eyes widened. You let me pens because you wanted to talk to me?" "I bought a 12-pack of black gel pens every Sunday," he admitted, his cheeks flushing again. "Just in case you forgot yours. And when you passed me notebook paper, I kept every single scrap. I still have them in a box under my bed at home." My stomach did a violent, weightless flip. 3 years. 3 whole years of me, sitting in class, sighing quietly to myself, thinking David was an unreachable basketball star who barely knew I existed. "You never said anything," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Because I was stupid," David said simply. "I thought I had time. I thought I'd tell you at graduation. But then graduation came and you left so fast, and then move-in day happened, and I saw you with a guy who looked like a high-fashion model driving a motorcycle." He looked down at me, his dark eyes vulnerable. "I lost my mind, Sally. I really thought I lost you." The sincerity in his voice hit me straight in the chest, wiping away all the confusion, the anger, and the awkwardness of the past 48 hours. My fingers twitched against his shirt fabric. "He's 36, I muttered, trying to fight the ridiculous smile pulling at the corners of my mouth. "He wears anti-aging eye cream and cries during Pixar movies." David let out a quiet, breathless laugh, his shoulders finally relaxing. "Good to know." And, for the record, I looked up, catching his eye. "I don't like older guys. I don't want a sugar daddy." David's gaze darkened slightly, his eyes dropping to my lips before lifting back to my eyes. "Then what kind of guys do you like?" My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Idiots who buy 12 packs of gel pens." A slow, breathtaking smile spread across David's face, a real, genuine smile that I had never seen him give anyone in high school. Before I could process it, his hand slid up to gently frame the sides of my neck, his thumb resting softly against my jawline. "I can do that," he murmured, his thumb brushing over my warm skin. "I can buy you all the pens in the world." He leaned down, his head tilting slightly, his dark lashes fluttering lower as he closed the remaining inches between us. I instinctively closed my eyes, my hands gripping his waist, my chest rising in anticipation. Honk. Honk, honk, honk. A blinding pair of headlights slammed into the alleyway, illuminating us like deer in a spotlight. A roaring engine echoed off the brick walls. "Sally," a booming voice yelled through a loudspeaker. "Get away from that juvenile delinquent. I'm coming for you, baby girl." David froze mid-incline. I snapped my eyes open, turning toward the mouth of the alley. There, mounted on a pitch-black, roaring Harley Davidson, was my father. He was wearing an oversized chrome-studded leather jacket, black leather pants, and heavy boots. His platinum blonde hair was spiked up, glistening under the streetlights. He looked like an extra straight out of a Fast and Furious movie. "Dad!" I shrieked, shielding my eyes from the high beams. "What are you doing here?" Mark kicked down the kickstand of his bike, swung his long legs off, and marched into the alleyway with long, aggressive strides. He pulled off his dark aviator sunglasses, even though it was 11 o'clock at night, and pointed a leather-gloved finger directly at David's chest. "I felt a disturbance in the force," my dad declared dramatically. "I was parked by the main gate waiting for my daughter to text me, and my paternal instincts shouted, 'Mark, your precious angel is being cornered in a dark alley by a boy with messy hair.'" David immediately stepped in front of me, putting his body between my dad and myself, his posture straightening instinctively. "Sir," David said, his voice instantly shifting into a formal, polite, albeit terrified tone. "I apologize. It's not what it looks like. I was just—" My dad stopped 2 feet away from David. He squinted his eyes, looking David up and down. He took in David's tall frame, his broad shoulders, his damp dark hair, and the dark shirt with the top 2 buttons undone. Then, my dad's eyes narrowed into slits. "Wait a minute," my dad said, tapping his chin. Platinum blonde, broad shoulders, sharp jaw, dark clothes. He looked at David, then turned his head to look at me, then looked back at David. Are you the guy my daughter was staring at near the quad yesterday? My dad asked. David blinked, caught off guard. Sir, the basketball guy. My dad pointed a finger at him, turning to me with a smug
grin. Sally, this is him, right?
The guy you were turning red for. The one you were secretly staring at for 3 years in high school. Dad, I screamed, my face burning so hot I thought my skin was going to melt off my skull. Stop talking. Shut up right now. Why should I shut up? My dad scoffed, rolling his shoulders. I'm your father. I have a right to evaluate the competition. Though I must say, he added, leaning in closer to inspect David's face, you're pretty good-looking, kid.
Not
as good-looking as me when I was 18, obviously, but solid. Solid 8 out of 10. David looked completely, utterly baffled. The terrifying image of the sugar daddy he had built up in his head over the last 48 hours had collapsed into a bizarre, hyperactive 36-year-old man who is currently rating his appearance. Thank you, sir, David managed to say, his brain clearly still struggling to process the interaction. Dad, please leave. I grabbed my dad's leather sleeve, trying to haul his heavy frame back toward his motorcycle. You are embarrassing me to death. I am an adult. I am in college. You'll always be my baby girl, my dad said dramatically, sweeping an arm around my shoulders and pulling me into a suffocating headlock, messing up my hair. And as your father, it is my duty to ensure no college hooligans break your heart. He turned back to David, his friendly demeanor suddenly dropping into a surprisingly sharp, intense look. You're David, right? My dad asked. David straightened his back instantly. Yes, sir. David Chun. David, my dad repeated, testing the name on his tongue. I heard from my wife, who heard from Sally's high school teacher's cousin, that you were the top student in your class and captain of the basketball team. Yes, sir. Good, my dad said, stepping forward until he was standing chest to chest with David. Even though David was 6'2" and my dad was 6'1", my dad's broad biker physique gave him an intimidating presence. Because if I see my daughter crying in her dorm room, I don't care if I'm 36 and have a mortgage, I will ride this Harley through your dorm wall and challenge you to a 3-point contest. And I don't lose. David didn't flinch. He looked my dad dead in the eye, his gaze steady and serious. You won't have to worry about that, mister. Mark, my dad said. Just Mark. Mister makes me sound like my father, and that guy has gray hair. Mark, David said respectfully. I promise you, I won't make her cry. My dad stared at David for a long, heavy moment. The silence hung in the alleyway, tense and charged. Then suddenly my dad broke into a massive, blinding grin, slapping David hard on the shoulder with enough force to stagger a lesser man. I like this kid, my dad boomed. He's got spine. Hey, David, you like Korean barbecue? I was just about to go grab some midnight pork belly, because Sally's mom is on a juice cleanse and won't let me eat meat at home. You in, Dad? I groaned loudly. David looked at me, a soft, amused spark dancing in his dark eyes. The heavy burden he had been carrying all day had completely lifted. I'd be honored, Mark, David said smoothly. My treat. Nonsense. I have a corporate credit card. My dad laughed, slinging an arm around David's shoulders as if they were old college buddies, completely forgetting that 2 minutes ago he had called him a juvenile delinquent.
Come
On, let's take the truck. Sally, jump in. As my dad walked toward his truck parked nearby, David slowed his pace, dropping back until he was walking right beside me. His long fingers brushed against mine. In the dark, I looked up at him, flustered and embarrassed.
I am so sorry about him. He has
no filter. David looked down at me, his fingers intertwining with mine, squeezing gently. Don't apologize, he whispered, his voice warm against the night air. I think I like your dad. You won't after he tells you about his midlife crisis hair routine, I muttered, but I didn't pull my hand away. The next morning, the sun broke over the campus quad with merciless brilliance. It was the first official day of the mandatory freshman physical education boot camp, a brutal 3-day orientation event designed to build school spirit and discipline. Every freshman was forced to assemble on the main athletic field in matching navy blue physical education uniforms by 7 a.m. I stood in the third row of my group, yawning heavily, feeling like a zombie.
My
Roommates, Chloe, Maya, and Sarah, were standing beside me, practically vibrating with gossip. Okay, spill, Chloe whispered furiously, elbowing me in the ribs.
What?
Happened last night? You left the barbecue early, and then Sarah said she saw you walking toward the alley with David Chun. Nothing happened, I mumbled, pulling my hair back into a ponytail. Don't lie, Sarah squeaked, leaning over. David Chun, the guy who hasn't smiled at a single person since registration. The guy who literally walks around campus like a dark, brooding prince. What were you guys doing in the alley? Before I could answer, a loud whistle shattered the air. Attention freshmen, a loud, booming voice bellowed through a megaphone. Standing on the raised wooden platform at the front of the field was the head physical education coach, a massive guy with a clipboard. Beside him stood 6 upperclassmen student assistants, and standing right at the front, looking tall, composed, and devastatingly handsome in a black athletic tank top and shorts,
Was David.
the moment he appeared on the platform, a collective murmur rippled through the female section of the freshman class. Holy crap, who is that? Is he a senior? Look at his arms. His shoulders are insane. That's David Chun. He's a freshman assistant because he got recruited for the varsity basketball team. I squinted up at him. The athletic tank top left his broad shoulders and toned arms completely exposed. His pale skin was smooth, his dark hair falling slightly over his forehead. He looked completely different from the flustered, blushing boy who had offered to be my dog in a dark alley 12 hours ago.
He
Stood there, arms crossed, his dark eyes scanning the crowd of hundreds of students with cool indifference. Then his eyes landed on me. The cold indifference melted instantly. A subtle, tiny crease appeared between his brows, and his eyes softened. He gave me a micronod, so small that no one else noticed. My cheeks flushed warm. I looked down at my sneakers, my heart doing a stupid little dance. All right, listen up, the coach yelled through the megaphone. Today's conditioning drill is the 4-corner relay. You'll be assigned in pairs.
1.
Person runs the heavy equipment crate across the field, hands it to their partner, and the partner sprints to the finish line. The assistants began walking down the rows, handing out heavy wooden crates filled with iron weights to the pairs. I was paired up with a tall guy from the engineering department named Jason. Jason had bright red hair, a friendly smile, and zero chill. Hey, I'm Jason, he said enthusiastically, picking up our heavy wooden crate. Don't worry, Sally, I'll carry the heavy load first. You just sprint at the end. Oh, thank you, Jason. I smiled politely. That's really nice of. Clack. A dark shadow fell over us. A large hand reached down and gripped the side of the wooden crate, pulling it effortlessly out of Jason's hands. We both blinked. David was standing right beside us, holding the heavy box with one arm like it weighed nothing at all. Assistant Chin? Jason asked, confused. Is there a problem? David looked down at Jason. His eyes were cold, calculating, and completely impassive, the exact same terrifying look he used to give rival players on the high school basketball court. This crate is uncalibrated, David said, his voice flat and authoritative. It's 5 pounds over the mandatory weight limit for this row. It's unsafe. Jason blinked. Unsafe? It's just a wood box with iron weights. I said it's unsafe, David repeated, his voice dropping an octave. He didn't even look at Jason. His gaze flicked down to me. I'll swap it for a lighter. 1. Wait, David, Assistant Chen, I said, catching myself before I used his first name in front of everyone. It's fine, we can handle it. No, you can't, David said firmly. He grabbed a different crate from the supply cart, one that looked suspiciously light, and set it down gently at my feet.
Then
He leaned down, pretending to inspect my athletic shoes, his head coming right beside my ear. Your shoelaces are untied, he whispered, his warm breath tickling my earlobe. And your red hair engineering friend is standing too close to you. My heart slammed against my ribs. I looked up, glaring at him through burning
cheeks.
He's just my relay partner. I don't care, David whispered back, his dark eyes sparkling with possessive irritation. He called you, Sally, within 10 seconds of meeting you. I didn't get to call you by your name for 3 years. David, I hissed under my breath. You are an assistant. People are looking. David slowly stood up, unbothered. He turned back to Jason, giving him a cool,
sharp look.
Make sure she doesn't trip. If she gets a scratch, you're doing 50 extra push-ups. Jason froze, nodding rapidly in sheer terror. Why, yes, sir. David walked away with long, effortless strides, leaving Jason staring at his back in absolute bewilderment. Man, Jason muttered, wiping sweat from his forehead. What is his deal? Is he always that strict? I buried my face in my hands, groaning internally. He wasn't being strict. He was being a wildly jealous, ridiculously possessive idiot, and he was taking his new self-proclaimed dog duties far too seriously. By noon, the news had spread across the freshman quad like wildfire. The infamous campus gossip page, the same one that had posted the photo of my dad dropping me off, was blowing up again. But this time, the narrative had taken a sharp, hilarious left turn. Campus gossip thread, freshman orientation update. Post. Okay, can someone explain what is happening between the new varsity basketball prodigy David Chen and that freshman girl Sally from the dorms?
Comments.
User 102. BRO. I was at the field conditioning today. David Chen literally swooped in and confiscated a weight crate just because some guy was standing close to her. User 44. Wait, isn't Sally the girl who got dropped off by that insane platinum blonde sugar daddy on the Harley? User 89. Guys. Plot twist. IT wasn't her sugar daddy. It was her actual biological father. User 12. What? User 89. My roommate is in Sally's dorm. Her dad is 36, bleached his hair for a midlife crisis, and is married to her mom. The whole sugar daddy thing was a giant misunderstanding. User 301. No way. So David Chen was crashing out for 2 days over her dad. User 55. Wait, so David Chen likes her? The guy who rejected 5 girls at the registration hall? User 77. Likes her? Y'all, he was holding her water bottle during break today, following 3 paces behind her like a high-end golden retriever bodyguard. It's over for the rest of us. I sat under the shadow of a large oak tree near the library, staring at my phone screen, my head throbbing. I told you, Maya said, taking a bite of her sandwich beside me. The internet moves fast. You went from sugar baby of the month to the girl who tamed David Chen in less than 12 hours. I want to bury myself in a hole, I groaned, leaning my head against the tree
Trunk.
Why does everything have to be so loud? Loud? Chloe giggled, pointing toward the path leading from the cafeteria. Speak of the devil. Look who's coming with a peace offering. I looked up. Walking down the brick path toward us was David. He had changed out of his PE uniform into a simple dark gray t-shirt and jeans. In his left hand, he was holding a cold boba milk tea, my exact favorite flavor, black tea with half sugar and extra boba. In his right hand, he was carrying a brown paper bag from the bakery down the street. As he walked, several girls sitting on the grass turned to watch him, whispering among themselves. David ignored them completely, his eyes locked entirely on me. He stopped in front of our tree, stepping into the shade. Hey, he said softly. My roommates instantly stood up like synchronized swimmers. Well, look at the time, Sarah said dramatically. We have to go check on our laundry. Yes, the laundry, Chloe added, grabbing Maya's arm. It's spinning. We must go watch it. Before I could protest, the 3 of them sprinted away toward the dorms, giggling like mad women. I sat there, looking up at David. You scared my roommates away. Good, David said without an ounce of remorse. He crouched down beside me, setting the cold boba tea and the bakery bag in my lap. I bought you the taro egg tarts from the bakery on 4th Street. You used to buy them every Friday after
School.
I blinked, looking at the warm paper bag. You remembered that? I remembered everything, David said quietly. He sat down on the grass next to me, his long legs stretched out his shoulder, resting lightly against mine. The subtle scent of soap and fresh rain clung to
His skin.
I picked up the boba tea, poking the straw through the plastic seal, taking a long sip. It was perfect. So, I murmured, looking sideways at him. Assistant Chen, I heard you were abusing your power today to intimidate poor engineering students. David didn't even flinch. He leaned his head back against the oak tree, looking up through the green leaves at the sky. He was talking too much, David said smoothly. And he was holding your bag. He was helping me carrying heavy equipment. I can carry your heavy equipment, David said, turning his head to look at me, his dark eyes deep and intense. I can carry your bag, your books, your water, and your watermelon. You don't need anyone else. I felt the heat rush straight up to my ears again. You are ridiculous. You know that, right? I know, David agreed softly. He reached out, his long fingers gently wrapping around my wrist, pulling my hand down into his lap, intertwining his fingers with mine. I spent 3 years being quiet and staying out of your way.
I'm
Done being quiet, Sally. My breath caught in my throat. The casual, easy demeanor he showed around my dad last night was gone. This was the real David, relentless, focused, and completely focused on me. David, I whispered, my heart pounding against my ribs. We're on campus. People are staring. Let them stare, David said calmly, his thumb stroking the back of my hand. They spent 2 days thinking you had a sugar daddy. Let them spend the rest of 4 years knowing you're mine. By Saturday evening, the chaos of move-in week had finally settled down.
But my
dad, being the relentless hurricane of a man that he was, decided he couldn't leave town without throwing one final family dinner to celebrate my first week of college. And, of course, he insisted on inviting David. We met at an upscale seafood restaurant near the harbor. The private dining room was beautifully lit, with a large round wooden table in the center. When David and I arrived, my parents were already seated. My mother, Vivian, a stunningly elegant woman with sharp hazel eyes, dark wavy hair, and a classy silk blouse, was sitting on one side, calmly sipping her tea. My dad, Mark, was sitting beside her, wearing a designer linen shirt, his platinum hair freshly styled, looking like he was ready for a magazine cover.
Shoot.
Sally, sweetie, my mom smiled warmly, standing up to hug me. And you must be David. It's so lovely to finally meet you without Mark yelling out of a motorcycle window.
Mom.
I flustered, smoothing my dress. It's an honor to meet you, Mrs. Lynn, David said politely, bowing slightly and handing her a beautifully wrapped box of high-end ginseng tea. Thank you for having me. My mom's eyes lit up. Oh, ginseng. How sweet. Look at that Mark. A young man with actual manners. Take notes. My dad scoffed, leaning back in his chair with his arms crossed. Manners are easy. Anyone can buy tea. The real test is character. Mark, shut up and let the kid sit down, my mom scolded calmly, giving him a look that immediately made my 6'1" biker dad deflate like a poked
Balloon.
Yes, honey, my dad muttered quietly. David and I pulled out our chairs and sat down across from them. As soon as we were seated, my dad leaned over the table, his eyes fixed on David. So, David, my dad started, pouring himself a cup of tea. Sally tells me, you're the captain of the varsity basketball team. Freshman recruit, sir, David corrected respectfully. I haven't earned the captain title in college yet. Humility. I like it. My dad grinned, leaning his elbows on the table.
You.
No, back in my day, I was the starting point guard for my high school team. Led us all the way to the state regionals. You averaged 3 points a game and got benched for throwing a basketball at the referee, my mom said plainly, not even looking up from her menu. Vivian, my dad gasped, wounded. That referee was blind.
He called a foul on
my soul. David bit his lip, trying desperately to suppress a smile. I covered my face with my menu, shaking my head in secondhand embarrassment. Anyway, my dad cleared his throat, regaining his composure. David, let's talk. Real talk. You've known my daughter for 3 years in high school, but you didn't say a word to her until college. Why the long wait? The mood at the table shifted slightly. My dad's tone was playful, but his eyes were sharp. He was protective of me, and under all his goofy midlife crisis theatrics, he really cared about who was in my life. David set his teacup down slowly. He didn't look flustered. He turned his gaze to my dad, his expression completely sincere. Because I was afraid, Mark, David said honestly. My dad raised an eyebrow. Afraid of what? I was afraid I wasn't good enough, David admitted, his voice quiet but steady. In high school, I thought I had to achieve a certain level, get into a top university, secure my athletic future, prove I could take care of myself before I had the right to stand beside her. I didn't want to offer her just half of myself. He glanced over at me, his eyes soft. But after these past few days, David continued, turning back to my dad, I realized how stupid that was. Leaving her side was the biggest mistake I ever
made.
I don't care if I have to start from scratch. I'm not going anywhere now. Silence fell over the private dining room. My mom looked at David with a gentle, deeply impressed expression. She reached across the table and patted David's hand softly. That is very sweet, David. My dad stared at David for a long 3 seconds. Then, his sharp expression slowly softened into a wide, approving grin. "Well said, kid," my dad nodded, picking up his chopsticks as the waiter arrived, with a massive tray of steamed lobster and chili crab. "Well said. Now,
Eat. If
you're gonna protect my daughter on campus, you need to gain 10 pounds of muscle." Past the crab. As the food was served, the tension completely melted away.
my dad spent the
Next hour bragging about his motorcycle modifications, while my mom told David hilarious stories about my dad crying when I lost my first tooth. Underneath the table, hidden by the long tablecloth, David's hand slid over to find mine. His fingers slid into the spaces between mine, warm, steady, and strong.
I
Squeezed back, looking at him sideways. A faint, gentle smile touched his lips, his thumbs softly stroking the back of my knuckles. Around 9 o'clock, dinner concluded. My parents said their goodbyes, my dad dramatically wiping a fake tear as he gave me a bone-crushing hug, warning David one last time that his Harley was always gassed up, and drove off in their truck. David and I walked back to campus together under the cool, starry night sky. The campus quad was peaceful and quiet. The orange street lamps cast long, warm shadows across the cobblestone paths. A light autumn breeze whistled through the high oak trees, dropping golden leaves onto the grass. We walked side by side, our hands firmly locked together. "Your parents are amazing," David said softly, breaking the quiet. "They're chaotic." I laughed, shaking my head. "My dad is 36 going on 16. My mom is the only reason our house hasn't burned down." "He loves you a lot," David said, his tone turning gentle. "I can see why you feel so safe around him. When I saw him putting his arm around you on move-in day, you looked so happy and relaxed.
I had never seen you smile like that in
high school." I stopped walking, turning to face him under the glow of a street lamp. "David," I said quietly, looking up into his dark, handsome face. "I was never relaxed in high school because every time you walked into the classroom, my heart felt like it was going to explode out of my chest." David stopped, his breath caught in his throat. "What?" "I sat in front of you for 3 years," I confessed, step by step, letting out all the secrets I had kept locked away. "I deliberately used bad pens so I would have an excuse to turn around and borrow yours. I stayed late after school on game days just to watch you practice from the third-floor library window.
I
Thought you were way out of my league." David stared at me, his eyes wide with absolute shock. "You watched my practices?" "Every Tuesday and Thursday." I admitted, my cheeks burning, but I forced myself to keep eye contact. "I thought you were cold and unapproachable. I thought you didn't even know my name." David let out a long, breathless laugh, a sound so rich, deep, and filled with relief that it sent a shiver straight down my spine. Before I could react, he stepped forward, his long arms wrapping around my waist, lifting me completely off my feet and pulling me tight against his chest. "David," I gasped, my hands instinctively clutching his broad shoulders. He buried his face in the crook of my neck, inhaling deeply, his broad back trembling slightly with quiet laughter. 3 years, he murmured into my skin, his voice muffled and warm. "We wasted 3 years being scared of each other." "We were stupid," I whispered, holding him tight, letting my fingers weave through the dark hair at the back of his neck. "Not anymore," David said. He slowly lowered me back down until my feet touched the cool pavement, but he didn't let go of my waist. He stood right there, his hands resting on my hips, looking down at me with an intensity that made the rest of the world blur into nothingness. "Sally," he whispered, his dark eyes sparkling under the lamplight. "Yeah." "I don't have a motorcycle," he said, a tender, mischievous smile playing on his
lips.
"And I don't have platinum blonde hair." "Thank God for that," I chuckled softly. "And I'm definitely not going to let you call me daddy," he added, his voice dropping into a low, velvet hum that sent heat straight to my toes. My heart did a violent backflip. "Then what are you going to let me call you?" David leaned down, his face inches from mine, his warm breath hovering over my
lips.
"Your boyfriend," he whispered. "For as long as you'll have me." I didn't answer with words. I leaned up on my tiptoes, wrapping my arms around his neck, and pressed my lips against his. The kiss was soft, sweet, and lingering, a quiet explosion of 3 years of unspoken words, hidden glances, borrowed pens, and messy misunderstandings, finally melting away into the crisp autumn night. David's arms tightened around my waist, pulling me impossibly closer, his lips moving against mine with a gentle, hungry reverence that made my knees go weak. When he finally pulled back, breathing heavily, his forehead rested against mine, his dark eyes shining with deep, unshakable devotion. "Deal," he whispered, his thumb softly wiping a stray tear of happiness from my
cheek.
I smiled, my heart fuller than it had ever been. "Deal." 3 months later, the first snow of winter was falling gently over the university campus. I was sitting in the bustling campus cafeteria, sitting by the radiator, typing away on my laptop for an upcoming economics midterm. Suddenly, a heavy, warm scarf was gently wrapped around my neck from behind. I turned my head. David was standing behind my chair, wearing his varsity basketball jacket, holding 2 hot cups of cocoa. "You're going to freeze," he said smoothly, sliding into the chair beside me and handing me a cup. "I'm sitting right next to the heater," I laughed, taking a sip of the sweet, warm cocoa. "Doesn't matter," David said, taking my free hand and pulling it into his jacket pocket, keeping his long fingers wrapped firmly around mine. "Your hands are
Cold.
Across the table, my roomies, Chloe, Sarah, and Maya, were sitting together, rolling their eyes in unison. "Gross," Chloe pretended to gag. "Can you guys go 5 minutes without being sickeningly romantic?" "Seriously," Sarah laughed. "Remember when we thought Sally had a sugar daddy? Now we just have to suffer through watching David Chin carry her backpack across campus every single morning like a devoted husband." "Hey," David said, raising an eyebrow at Sarah, his voice cool and calm. "I like carrying her backpack." Before Sarah could tease him further, my phone on the table lit up with a video call notification. The caller ID read, "Platinum Dad Motorcycle." I swiped to accept the call and held the phone up. My dad's face popped up on the screen. He was wearing a Santa hat, aviator, sunglasses indoors, and a leather jacket. "Sally baby," my dad boomed through the speaker, loud enough for half the cafeteria to hear. "Is that boy taking care of you? If he isn't, tell him I just bought a new exhaust pipe for the Harley and I can be on campus in 30 minutes. In the background, my mom's voice rang out sharply. "Mark,
Put the phone down.
and finish hanging the Christmas lights, or I'm throwing your leather jacket in the trash." "Coming, honey," my dad yelled back before turning back to the camera with a
Wink.
"Hey, David. Keep up the good work, kid. See you guys for Christmas dinner." The screen clicked off. The whole table erupted into laughter. I covered my face, shaking my head, while David just smiled softly, leaning over to kiss the top of my head right in front of everyone. "He's crazy," I whispered into David's shoulder. David squeezed my hand inside his pocket, his dark eyes shining with quiet, absolute happiness. "He's great," David whispered back. "And so are you."